This play is a culmination of my lifelong obsessions and sort of my life. So, you know, I'm the son of Thai immigrants. I was born in the Midwest in Indiana. While I was a kid, I was obsessed with horror. I was obsessed with Stephen King and the Twilight Zone and everything supernatural. My whole career has been writing plays that have sometimes a social element or a comedy element, but always touching on something supernatural. So I've written about invisible people and spontaneous combustion and superheroes and aliens. But this is the first time I've ever dealt with ghosts. So it's just all that stuff coming into one. I have an obsession with New Orleans. I'm really interested in the intersection of race. So it's everything. It's everything. Yes.
So I don't really know how to kind of grade this question, so I'm going to kind of stumble through it.
Okay.
There's a lot of things about like kind of intergenerational trauma, a lot of need for family healing. You know, not only from the son and the immigrant and the brother and everything. It just it seemed like there were like a lot of themes of kind of that were really tough. That you know aren't really easy for a lot of people to talk about. And I just kind of wanted to know, you know, not only as the writer, you know, but also the director, what was it like to kind of like work on, you know, such a public piece? You know, and kind of start a dialogue on, you know, mental health and kind of like healing in between families, because I mean that's something, you know, we like to talk like that's starting to get easier to talk about, right? But I mean, I feel like it was presented in such a really important way, you know, because like you said, you know, you touched on kind of like a lot of the intersections. You know, of race, of you know, immigration status, and things like that. And I just kind of wanted to know, like, what was it healing to get to write it, and was it healing to get to direct it? And kind of like, what is it like? What did that? I don't know. Like, how did it impact you, and how will it impact your work going forward?
Sure. Just occurred to me also we should repeat the question for the recording.
Yes.
So the question is about sort of the difficulty of dealing with heavy subjects such as intergenerational trauma, et cetera, et cetera. Randy, you want to talk about, start us off?
Well, why don't you start, and then I'll talk about what we don't talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I like dealing in my work with difficult issues, but in a way that is unexpected, because when you deal with sort of big, difficult issues, especially social issues, you could very easy fall into the trap of melodrama or histrionics and things of that nature. But I really wanted to do it in a way that was playing with genre and playing with tone, so that the messages kind of can be dealt with a little bit. Not necessarily easier, but in a way that's more accessible. But yeah, I don't know that I've ever shied away from difficult subjects, because these are subjects that you know, that are in the lives of the people that I know and my family and myself. So why shy away from it? You know, it's like and theater is a place to be vulnerable anyway. And if I can't be vulnerable here, then where can I be, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to start with that theater is a place that you can tell a story within a community, to start a conversation, to have empathy and compassion of like, oh, I'm being seen. And that's, if it's about race, or it's about mental illness, or if it's about climate crisis, whatever it is, from this very specific story, you say you can connect with it in some way, and there's a healing when you feel like you're not alone, yes? And then hopefully you can continue the conversation outside of the theater, and maybe even do something about it. I mean, that's the goal. Theater, I feel like, can change the world if people acted on what they are able to experience and feel and see. So we had amazing conversations in the rehearsal room about specifically a lot of things, but about mental illness and how it's taboo to even talk about in certain cultures. you know, and especially in marginalized communities, there's just things that, so it doesn't get taken care of. The issues get worse. I feel like mental illness, I just having a conversation with my partner and her parents about, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have in the United States, and how poorly it's dealt with, starting with children in elementary schools and high schools. We don't, and we just push it aside. We punish people for their behavior. We don't find out why. We don't talk about it, and then we push them on to high school, and we push them on to, from the education system to the prison system, right? The court system, then the prison system, and then we try to, there's just not a healthy way of dealing with that. And then we wonder why there's shootings, why there's these uprisings, why it's all connected to that. And so we had really a lovely conversation. That's what I love about the process of theater, the amount of research that Rio was our dramaturg so did a lot of research on a lot of different things, and we learn through this process, and also are able to talk through that and realize, oh, we have so many more commonalities between the Asian community and Black community that can bring us together. But it's an honor to work on. It's hard. But again, we treat it with respect. We treat all those things with respect. We have to learn as much as we can about race, about mental illness, about climate change, about Katrina, about New Orleans, about Thailand. We have 3 Thai actors in this show. You know, we have to take that care when we're telling those kinds of stories, on all those aspects. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for, sharing your really important.
And snapping when.
Yeah.
Our audiences need to relax and respond more. It's so fun to hear gasps and things and let it out, laugh, cry, whatever it is. Just and they teach kids, when they go into theater, be quiet, and it drives me crazy. So then they hate theater because the first thing they're told is don't express yourself. Just well, of course you'd rather watch Netflix, because then you can fart and do whatever you want and no one's gonna judge you. I went away from the subject there. So.
This gentleman there, and then this person over here.
By the moment in the play when Delia was screaming at the ghost, "You don't belong here. You have to leave." And it seemed like a metaphor for an immigrant experience, that the ghost left the former life, but hasn't really adjusted to the new life. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very astute observation. I mean, I'd always thought of this play as primarily being about different forms of displacement, and it's easy to kind of see what the living characters are going through in terms of that theme. But it was my intention that the ghost is also dealing with a very unique form of displacement as well. So yeah, I mean. The idea of not belonging in a certain place, or being removed forcibly or not forcibly from a certain place, or just moving to move for the living and the dead can be a very difficult thing to go through. I mean, as you know, I mean, I think you've all read the statistic about how just moving locations is one of the most traumatic things that you could possibly go through. So you could imagine all the ways that people have to deal with things when they're faced with things like Katrina or crossing continents. Great observation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I? And in that moment, there's a scream that the ghost has. And I was talking to Prince about this yesterday. I'm like, I did not have the equipment or the budget to do what I wanted to do in that scream. Because that scream to me is so cathartic of just all the racism. Every time anyone's ever in the history of the world said, "Go home, you don't belong here," the reaction you want is this, just to frickin' scream. And in the Broadway production, the walls would crumble. would crumble, the earth would shake under your feet, and you would just, that's how I wanted to express that moment. We didn't have enough lights, we didn't have enough bricks to pick up to express that rage. Thank you. I'm trying.
We had a question right there.
Yeah, for Randy, I was wondering, it mentioned in the program that you had taught at University of Minnesota, and I'm actually going there in the fall. So
What?
I was wondering if you were still teaching there, and also like how teaching at there and different schools has like kind of impacted your process and stuff as a director.
Well, first of all, congratulations on getting into the University of Minnesota. What are you? What major? What are you going into? Are you decided?
Graphic design, but I also do like crew and stuff for theater, so I was probably doing some of that.
Awesome. Yeah, to me, I'm doing other kind of work there. Actually, I'm going as an actor into different classes and doing Shakespeare scenes and other kind of scenes they want, which is what I'm going to be doing as soon as I get back there. But yeah, I worked a lot with their BFA program, their actor training program there. And education's always been part of, I started directing through education, through directing, teaching young kids, and then, and to me, theater education is not teaching people how to act, but teaching people how to communicate and find their voice and to be authentic. That's what theater, I'm not teaching them to become the next Marlon Brando. That's the weirdest person that popped into my head. And I have a weirder story connected to that I'm not going to talk about right now. Yeah, so, yeah, it's always been part of it. I teach now at McAllister College, which is in St. Paul also, so I teach directing there. So yeah, it's very important to me. You teach. You've taught too.
I do. I think of myself as a writer, speaker, and educator. So I think teaching is something that I'm always drawn to, and when I can, I do it as much as I can.
You're doing a workshop on Monday.
Yeah, I'm running a workshop on a playwriting workshop actually a multi-genre. It doesn't have to be playwriting. Workshop on Monday here at 7 o'clock, 6:30?
6:30.
6:30 here at the theater.
On Monday nights.
Pay what you can. I'm gonna run a little thing, and you'll hopefully learn some things.
And anybody can. You don't have to be a writer to.
No, I mean, if you're interested in theater, the subject is the title of the talk and workshop is Beyond Realism, pushing the boundaries of the imagination, and it's about how film and TV is really rooted in realism, and that has unfortunately made a lot of young playwrights think that realism is all there is in the theater. So, this workshop is about breaking form and breaking rules, and there's so many interesting theatrical things that you could do on the stage that is very unique to the stage. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit. Yes.
I hope you'll forgive a far less deep question than
Sure.
the rest of these, but this comes from a theatrical designer. Watching this, I know reading the script, I would say, oh my God, this is amazing stuff, and how the F am I going to do? All these crazy things are going to happen. How much do you think about that in the process of writing, the practicality of doing this in like a 3/4 thrust theater or wherever it's going to end up, small regional theater, as you're writing really wild things into your script?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm writing, I don't really restrict myself to anything, and I just leave it up to the theater to kind of figure out how they're going to do it. I think that in the script notes, there's a playwright note where I write, you could do the effects as your budget allows, as long as sort of the emotional intention is achieved. And the playwright Jose Rivera, a great playwright, once said that one of his tips for young playwrights was write one impossible thing in your play and don't let anybody convince you to take it out, ever. So I always love that.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, first of all, for writing the play and for directing the play. Thank you Perseverance Theater for bringing the play. Thank you to the actors and actresses who brought the play to life and the many parts of the team, because it was a joy to experience, especially as an Asian American. It was an honor to get to watch it. That being said, as an artist, I'm really curious to hear from you guys if there was like a piece in the play that you're really proud of as a writer or as a director that you imagine maybe some people on their first pass might miss, but it's like
Ooh.
a little simple or exciting thing, a little gem. I would love to hear those details.
Sure. You want to start, Randy?
Let me think.
My favorite plays, my favorite novels, my favorite movies, my favorite TV shows have great endings. So if you were to see a list of my favorite plays, you will always go to the ending and go, oh my God, that's an amazing ending. So I always strive to make amazing endings. And so I'm particularly proud about this ending just because a lot of things come together. But I do think that on a first read, and sometimes even a first watch, the significance of what that ending is kind of is lost sometimes on sort of like a first viewing or a first read. So.
Do you want to tell us why?
No.
What do you think? Hearing that is his favorite, why do you think that it's...
Did you like the ending?
I love the ending.
Why did you like the ending?
Okay. I love that it brought together, like we were talking about how the stories run so parallel across the whole play, and then of course at the ending to really give the intersection of both of their lives and cultures together and what was important to them.
Right.
And I loved, it wasn't said explicitly, but I loved that the mother got her funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I love so much. Yes. And yeah, not everybody will get that the first time, but that's fine.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
I also loved that, what was the, Delia?
Mm-hmm.
That Delia as luck changed. And it felt like an intergenerational trauma
Yeah.
healing piece with her and her mom too.
Right. Yeah.
Her luck changed, yeah. So good. No, so like you're directing this piece, and you know that it's good. You know that Prince didn't waste anything, right? You know that everything has a meaning. And I think my favorite moment now, and I feel like the cast didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't sure what I was really doing, but it's when you were revealed that the mom is a ghost, right? And it's just, there's very few words there. There's not like someone says, oh my gosh, mom's a ghost, right? So like, how do we make that moment clear? And Prince has an amazing pacing in his play. There are scenes that go quick, and then there's just scene, and then there's air for you to be able to breathe and take it in, right? So that moment, I wanted air. And in rehearsal, it looked really silly, and I'm sure they thought like, this is taking weight too. Why am I staring at, why am I standing here? But sure enough, when we got into tech, which is one of my favorite times, and we had the sound, and we had the lights, and that, when I first saw that moment come together, I was like, I get it now. I get that. And what a cool way to tell a story, without being laden with language necessarily. And so to trust that. Yeah.
Just bouncing off of what Randy said, and then just echoing your question, there is a specific stage direction in the play. Right when they start the kind of ghost investigation after they light the candles in the first act, where in the stage directions, when they sit down, it actually says. They wait and listen for at least 15 seconds, which is in stage time like an eternity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that part.
And in rehearsal, after like a little bit of silence, actors they want action, right? So they'd just be like, car passing, you know, or like, no, longer. And they're like, okay, then pause, I'm too fast, still too fast. So what we did in tech was we just timed it out so that after the last line, the sound cue wouldn't go on until after 15 seconds. So they had to sit there. And we can guarantee 15 seconds.
You actually specify an uncomfortably long time. Which
Yes.
is accurate.
Yep.
You know, of course I didn't know that one brother was a ghost. So what I didn't catch, and maybe I wasn't astute enough, but when Felix and Delia are talking to Max, do they ever direct anything towards the dead brother, or are they just talking to Max?
You should watch it again.
If I had realized that, it would maybe gel a little more, but if that was what happened, that they never even acknowledged who was there.
How about people who've seen this? Who's seen this show for the second time? Did you see them look at Visa? Yeah.
And they never respond to anything he says. Yeah.
It's brilliant writing, and in that there's so many interruptions that you can't tell when someone's not listening, or so it makes it very difficult to memorize and to execute, but that's the brilliance of it. And then it was just my job to make it look like the eye line, so I'd always put the brothers right next to each other, or so that you couldn't really tell.
Oh, brilliant. That was great.
And then a lot of times the actors would just speak out and not look at anybody, so then you wouldn't tell also that they weren't looking at Visa route. But come back and check it out for yourself.
It's fun when you know the secret.
Yeah, it's a different secret. Cone of silence in here. There's a question over there.
Yeah, I just want to pile onto the brilliant statement for a second, because I really enjoy good horror, and one of the things that I like about good horror is when the sort of campy, a thing that could be campy or an effect becomes the sort of catharsis for the true horror that you experience right before it. And this entire show was just this like series of like, wow, I don't really want to think about that. Oh, that's horrifying. And like, I just thought you wove that together really well, and it never felt like I was popping out of it and thinking, oh, that's not like a reasonable thing to happen. And I think when you find yourself in a moment where you're like, yeah, face just came out of the wall. That seems like a normal, reasonable thing to happen here. You know that like the artist has really done something brilliantly horrific. I love that.
Thank you. That's my favorite horror that actually has an emotional impact, you know, definitely.
Super believable. As soon as you said Stephen King, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There are questions over there.
Oh, it's not a question, but this is like my first time here, and then that I would like to say that I absolutely loved the play, and I got really invested into it, and you guys made the first time very enjoyable, and I want to come back again and see what I missed.
Thank you very much.
Good for you for coming to the theater.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I haven't been like much of a theater kind of person growing up, so like really changed my perspective on it.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'll tell you a secret. I wasn't a theater person growing up either. When you grow up in the Midwest in Indiana, there ain't a lot of theater going on.
Or an Asian family. That's not one of the options.
Yes.
We went to a
My
lot
parents didn't know what theater was.
No, they thought it wasn't for them. It wasn't for us.
Yeah.
They weren't telling our stories.
That's
so
right.
why would I go to a theater?
Oh yeah. I just want to say I can Ishish too. Thank you for this work. It was really amazing to watch. And I was just wondering if anything interesting came up for you guys in regards to society's relationship with the supernatural. Because I always thought like things like the spiritualism fad was really fascinating. How that came and went in like the late 1800s. And I think Rio and I had a good conversation about how many people say they believe or they have had supernatural experiences, but it's not in the public discussion anymore.
Sure. I mean, I think it's far more common in Asian cultures that it's kind of talked about, and it's just a matter of fact. You know, it's you know, there is a history of mental illness in my own family, and there was a time where that mental illness was not seen as a psychological problem. It was seen as a spiritual disease. So instead of being taken to a medical doctor or being medicated, my family member was taken to a monk, and he's better now. So it's interesting. It's interesting, but it is very common in Asian cultures. But I think that it's pretty common in the United States also. But it's not kind of hip to kind of talk about, right?
But it's talked about like in religion, right? People pray to a god or to a saint or to so there's relationship to supernatural, but not, even though it's not talked about in the same way, or it's not the same kind. But there is faith, there is belief, there you see things, you feel things, right? And I actually was looking at this play in two ways. Like, what if there isn't a real ghost? So what is it actually, what's happening to them? What are the things that haunt us, right? That manifest maybe in a ghost, but actually is like just things that are burdening you in your life that manifest as that, right? Did Felix really get killed by a pillow? Or did his anxiety of losing it and not being able to take care of his wife, did that cause him physical heart attack, a physical manifestation of that mental state? Why don't you just come over later?
So the set is fascinating, but is this the wall that's the house is crumbling down? Or is it the house that was left when they left either Cambodia or they left New Orleans? And I was trying to determine that in my own mind, and I wondered why that was done the way it is.
That's absolutely right. Yes, all of those things. The play is so grounded in humanity that we felt like we could stylize the set more and to represent that. We took a lot of pictures of poorer neighborhoods in Thailand, and also what was left of Katrina. Yeah, so that was the inspiration for that. And there's supposed to also be cracks along here, the same kind of cracks, and then when she screams, they were supposed to light up, and as if that was the crumbling of the world. But yeah, that's great observation. Smart audience. Y'all knew that was going to be a slot machine too. When he said it's going to be heavy, you're like, oh, that's smart. I was like, oh, you're so smart, you audience.
Should we take one more?
Oh, there's one.
Okay, one more.
I'm curious, how many times has this play been performed, and how have they been different from one another? Or do they all pretty much turn out the same in some way?
Yeah, so in 2019 was the first year that this was produced, and it was produced in 5 different theaters in 2019, and there was so much momentum going, and I was like, this is it, this play's gonna go everywhere. And then 2020 happened, and nothing happened for a couple of years. But fortunately, things picked up this year, and it'll be in LA a little bit later on in the year. I've had the good fortune of seeing every production so far, and they've been different but the same, and some budgets have been bigger than others, and the effects have varied to varying degrees, but in terms of the different casts, you know, they've all been really fantastic, and they've responded really well. I think the major differences are just in terms of the design elements, right? So yeah, I mean, the thing that I love about this design that's since I've seen this a lot, not a lot of the effects surprised me, but I was surprised and very pleased that wall cracked open at the end, and the 2 ghosts exited there. That was a brilliant touch, I thought. So that was new to me, and I thought that was super cool. Yeah.
Where is it being produced in LA?
It'll be at East West Players in Los Angeles. Yeah.
In any of the productions you've seen, has anything actually spooky creeped into the performances?
Oh, you mean like real supernatural stuff? I don't know, but things will happen at East West because that place is famously haunted. I mean, there are dozens of stories in that theater which exist in an old church, actually, and people have seen things and felt things, and I've taught there at night where I would have to close up after all the students have left on the second. I am freaking scared out of my mind. It's crazy. I get people on the phone. I'm like, okay, just stay on the phone with me while I alarm this place. It's really scary in there. Okay, last question.
Okay, yeah, so somebody mentioned that scene where both the brother and the ghost kind of like go to like leave together, and kind of like I mentioned before, like this play like has a lot of like really deep and kind of like dark themes like mental illness and integration, just kind of like the traumas that all kind of come with it. And part of me wonders, like when the ghosts disappear, we don't see much more of Delia or Delia's ghosts. We don't see Felix, but we don't see the young girl anymore. We still see the mom. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, is the play intended to be more like a narrative of on mental illness, or what's the kind of significance of that scene, and why is the mom still there? That's kind of like what's making me wonder. Is the main character like really truly mentally ill if the mom's still there, or what?
Yeah, so in answer to that question, I left that that's up to you to decide. I've designed the play in a way where it could be interpreted either way, that he's either mentally ill or he's actually seeing a ghost. So either interpretation is fine depending on how you read the play. And then why the mom specifically being left over, aside from that stuff, I think it's to achieve this kind of resolution that I wanted, because she did not have the proper resolution that she wanted. There were early versions, this is, you're probably seeing like draft 10 of the play, right? So I think in early drafts of the play, the brother and the mother were in that final scene, but through the drafts it just didn't feel right, because it really felt like his story was resolved, as well as the other ghost's story was resolved and Felix's story was resolved. But I felt the mother's story was not resolved because that relationship had not been resolved yet, because of this kind of funeral that didn't happen for her. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great job.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for staying.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.